dance community.
Connects people.
Brings people together.
Collaborate.
Culture.
Makes the connections.
Have that community around them.
Concept.
Create opportunities for
Passion to dance music.
Groovin The Moo, Hitch Music and Arts, Splendour In The Grass, who's next? 2024 has been one of the most brutal years on record for music festivals, to say the least. Depending on who you ask, everyone has a different take on why our most beloved festivals have been failing. From curation to insurance, police pressure to climate change, and let's not forget the cost of living, there's been no shortage of challenges for our local festival industry. In the last year to date, 35 music festivals have been cancelled or postponed across Australia. That festival industry is worth approximately $36.4 billion, according to the Live Events Industry Forum. $36.4 billion in money for Australian musicians, creatives, craftspeople, and other workers, both city-based and rural, currently under more threat than ever before. So, what's next? What could this mean for Australia's music industry, its culture, and the future of festivals overall? My name is Jack Cahoon, and over the next 30 plus minutes on behalf of EMC, I'll be speaking with a whole variety of industry professionals and tastemakers to get their read on exactly why our festival industry has reached this point and what we, as punters, promoters, and government, need to be doing to change it. Is there really a problem? Many festival organisers would argue that this is merely a changing of the guard of sorts. But who better to share that opinion than the current head of the Australian Festival Association, Mitch Wilson?
Well, I think we are facing a few problems, challenges, sort of whatever you want to call them, particularly since the pandemic and lockdowns and all of the issues that we've faced since coming out of lockdown. So, the economy-wide supply chain issues have had a huge impact on music festivals, just cost increases across the board, whether that's transport to production and everything that goes into putting on a festival. But we also saw skill shortages, labour shortages from a number of people leaving the industry during COVID because they weren't supported by the federal government, they weren't given JobKeeper. The way it was designed deliberately excluded a lot of people that worked in live entertainment, especially on the sort of travelling, touring circuit.
But who is the AFA exactly? And why haven't many of us heard of them? An industry body for music seems like, to many, an incredibly foreign concept. But as Mitch explains, it was born out of a real necessity just a few years ago.
We were formed in 2018 to be a voice specifically for festival organisers. I think some of the challenges we were facing as an industry were, becoming more difficult to fight individually. And a lot of the original members just saw the benefit of having one voice on behalf of the industry.
These 2018 problems were the radical introduction of the Music Festivals Act by then New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian. New South Wales is one of the country's largest festival markets, and the introduction of these laws, which made it more difficult, more expensive, and more fraught with criticism to run music festivals, ultimately drove many festivals to close or never start, paralleling New South Wales's 2014 lockout laws in many ways. While Ms Berejiklian may at this point be somewhat of a distant memory, and with New South Wales and many other state governments pledging to overturn many restrictions that have made running music festivals near impossible across the country, many local members still aren't satisfied. Cate Faehrmann is a Greens member of the New South Wales Legislative Council and vocal advocate for music festivals, pill testing, and overhauling of our police. The New South Wales government recently announced its plans for a drug summit, set to take place in December of this year, and Victoria's Premier, Jacinta Allan, has recently announced plans for a permanent pill testing program to be based out of Melbourne City in mid-2025. This interview took place before those recent announcements. She was all too happy to chat when it came to talking about the state of New South Wales and Australia's music festival industry. For her, the first point of discussion needed to be police and the role that they play in the fun that music festivals represent.
Well, I think I'm the only person really in the New South Wales Parliament that has been really calling out some of the challenges that music festivals have faced, particularly as a result of over-policing. So the party that would be the Labor Party, if a major party was going to really tackle it in government. But the Labor Party is also a bit conflicted. I think the Police Association kind of makes that a bit hard. It's like nobody wants to talk about a heavy police presence. Nobody wants to challenge the police budget. Nobody wants to challenge police numbers. I don't think this current government wants to do that because they're very keen to keep the Daily Telegraph and Sky News and 2GB on side, frankly. So it's like this area that's the no-go area.
For many across Australia, particularly when compared with similar events overseas, punters' first thought in regard to music festivals is the overwhelming presence of police, security, red tape, and more. Festivals have, notoriously, been cancelled at the drop of a hat as a result of intense pressure by emergency services and government. Just a few months ago, Pitch Music and Arts Festival had an intensely public situation unfold as they negotiated the right to continue running with local emergency groups. User-paid policing, while a state-based policy, is almost entirely national. While South Australia doesn't charge, Victoria, Western Australia, Queensland and New South Wales do, with Queensland and New South Wales being the most expensive. These costs are, generally, event-dependent. The Australian Festival Association told The Guardian of even more extreme discrepancies, including one festival where New South Wales charged $67,000 for patrolling a 22,000 crowd, while the Force's Victorian equivalent charged only $7,500 for a crowd of 30,000. In Queensland, the same show cost $37,000 for a crowd of 20,000 people. But is blaming police and government just an easy way out? As the cost of living rises, so too do many other costs associated with running events. Consumer behaviours are one thing, but rising touring, travel, labour, material and insurance costs are just a few of the often budget-breaking line items that festivals deal with year on year. For Tara Medina, co-founder of iconic New South Wales festival Strawberry Fields, these costs are a period of flux that she thinks will likely reset the festival landscape as we know it. As the festival approaches its sold-out 15th birthday, this coming November, she reflected on the difference between then and now.
The start of Strawberry Fields was kind of a glorious example of the naivete of youth, I think. Myself, my co-founders were like 19, 20, 21 respectively, and we loved music. We went to a lot of raves. We had a lot of friends who did the same, and a festival that we had been going to at the start of every summer kind of collapsed in fantastical fashion and went out of business, and we thought, what are we going to do if that show's not on? And my dear friend, Elliot Rothfield, was definitely the most ambitious of any of us with regards to what he thought was realistic for someone our age, experience and financial means to achieve. And he said, let's throw our own festival, you know? And next thing you know, tickets were on sale on Moshtix. There was a poster. There was definitely no plan. In terms of where we sit in the broader festival ecosystem, even though we're now doing reasonable numbers at like 12 or 13,000 people a year, I still think of us as being more part of the underground. You know, we were born of that era where Facebook didn't exist for the first Strawberry, and most people were choosing what parties to go to based off flyers that they would find in a cafe or a record store, like not based off sponsored ads in their feed. I think that we're just in a moment of flux within the festival ecosystem. And this is not the first time this has happened in my adult lifetime. When I was a teenager, we had the big day out, and that sort of like huge, big punch, urban, like crazy lineup format sort of ruled the day. And then the advent of dance music came about with future music, and they started to create these mega touring electronic concepts, whether it was like Global Gathering or Summer Days. And that kind of came and went. And then it was camping festivals and, you know, the ascent of Falls and Splendour. And then it was Doofs. And now it's kind of mixed medium of, I think patrons are they have such better access to so many different music communities and mediums that their tastes aren't so linear. And it's like any festival lineup anywhere in the world right now that commands more than 10,000 people is going to have a really diverse range of genres on there. But I think we're just in a moment of flux as to flushing out what the audience really wants.
To play devil's advocate, aside from the issues impacting the festival industry from the outside, Could the trends and ruts festivals have placed themselves in also be to blame? Talia Jimenez, aka Tangela, is an Eora-based DJ, promoter, and radio host on the city's FBI radio. With the experience of countless community, underground, and unregulated events on her side, she shared that in her opinion, the call may be coming from inside the house, and an easy way to see the situation improve.
We look so much to overseas. Our lineups, they look diverse on paper, but the headline slots are given to overseas artists, and there's like a lot of emphasis put on these big touring artists, and I don't think the support for the local scene is where I think it should be. I think that's one of Australia's, in my opinion, our biggest problems when it comes to approaching festival lineups. And so many are just the same. It's the same sort of artists that are like recycled in different formations across this like festival circuit. But the fresh blood that's coming through that is not super great. So I think that's one of my biggest problems with the Australian festival circuit.
For many festivals, intervention by police, authorities, and government is a one-hit kill. Rising user-paid policing costs, coupled with regulatory demands, often leave festivals either targeted in all future years, too financially drained to continue, or caught up in an intense legal proceedings that delay all hopes of their return. Eric Lamir is the founder of Rabbits Eat Lettuce, originally a New South Wales-based electronic music festival, or DUF, which after a very public interaction with New South Wales Police in 2018, moved states into Queensland. Eric shared his and Rabbit's experience with me from his home in Queensland.
We moved the event up to Queensland for 1 year because of opposition from within the New South Wales Police. We ended up getting the event back down to New South Wales the following year in 2016 and got a 5-year development approval for the festival, which we operated under for 3 years from 2016 to 2018. And then 2018, at one of our regular pre-event stakeholder meetings, we got ambushed by the New South Wales Police at that meeting. It would be a meeting that normally we would go to with like people from the council, the fire brigade, we might have the local cop in there. It was all pretty standard, basic procedure. And this particular meeting, you know, we're talking like a month or so out from the festival. We walk into this meeting room and there's like 8 or 9 senior ranking police officers with their badges on their shoulders and all the stuff, you know. We're like, what's going on here? This is serious. And they'd come to use their veto power in our DA to cancel our event because there was a clause in our DA that said if the police feel the event is unsafe, it cannot proceed. So they were kind of rocking up to the meeting with all their backup, basically saying, look, we don't believe this event is safe, it cannot proceed. They wouldn't give us any further details to why the event was not safe or discuss what mitigation measures we could possibly implement to make it a safe event. They were just kind of one-word responses that the event wasn't safe and couldn't proceed.
Queensland will become the first Australian state to approve ongoing pill testing at music festivals. Experts say research supports the move and that political leaders need to get on board if they want to minimise harm to festival goers.
If you have a service where they test it and they say, this will kill you.
Victoria will begin pill testing and it will start from this summer. It does not make drugs legal and it does not make drugs safe. But it does mean we are going to give young people the information they need.
I just saw the news that the Labor government had given it the green light in Queensland and then picked up the phone and started kind of ringing around and working out which providers were going to be able to deliver the service. And got talking to Pill Testing Australia and The Loop, and they were kind of putting in government tenders, and the Pill Testing Australia ended up getting the tender. So, yeah, we ended up getting them on, and it was quite a long process. Like when we started talking to them to when we actually had it all approved, it was like months and months of back and forth. But yeah, it was great to see. It was such a big positive step for harm reduction in Australia. Very proud that Rabbits Eat Lettuce got to host the first Queensland-based trial and the first camping festival in Australia to host the service. And, the results were effective. I think they took 210 samples over the weekend, and 14 people discarded their drugs in the amnesty bins because they weren't what they thought they were. So that potentially was avoiding a medical situation. I think they discovered some novel substances too that they hadn't seen before. So good data to collect to actually have a bit of a window into what people are taking, and it provides a bit of informal regulation to a black market as well. If drug dealers out there know that people might go and test what they've just bought, then they might be less inclined to sell dodgy shit.
And the mercury has hit around 40 degrees for the third day in a row in Victoria. The extreme heat causing chaos at one of the state's biggest music festivals. Saturday afternoon, the festival was back on. Now, just hours ago, authorities released an extreme fire danger warning ahead of Monday, and the festival was officially cancelled.
Good evening. Cancelled by COVID for the past 2 years, Splendour in the Grass was meant to be back bigger and better than ever. But Mother Nature had different plans. Day one called off due to wild weather.
Festival goers have been asked to leave. They've been evacuated throughout the day as there are serious fears for their safety coming into tomorrow.
Intense fire, flooding and more has become all too regular an occurrence for Australians nationwide. As impactful as they've been on the day-to-day of our lives, events with months, even years of preparation which rely entirely on manageable weather to run, have found themselves facing climate change in ways never thought possible. Rising insurance costs as a result of cancellations are the most present and impactful way that climate change is affecting Australia's festival industry. Mitch Wilson, in a follow-up conversation, told us that while event insurance does vary from event to event, there are reports of it having seen an up to 300% increase in premiums and providing lesser coverage. Mitch Wilson explains.
On insurance, I think we've seen a sort of reorganisation of insurers' risk profiles and that coming out of COVID, given the disruption that event saw. And there's been examples of our members having their premiums increase or their coverage changed since that period, and then that has a flow-on impact to their appetite to take on the risk of proceeding if, they might not be covered in the event of something going on. So that's probably the biggest impact from the insurance side. There's conflicting views around how much premiums have gone up. So we're having a conversation with the federal government around the need for government to be at the table within event cancellation insurance, whether that's weather or pandemic related. But the problem is, I think we're not the only industry sort of facing these challenges, and government got out of insurance a long time ago, so it's not that easy to sort of resolve some of these challenges. We saw some of the state governments get involved during COVID to sort of offer policies, but that's a problem for us too, because we don't want to see Victoria, for example, go off and run a scheme, because that doesn't impact the whole industry, and there's a whole lot of touring festivals that that only helps one of the legs of their tour. So yeah, I think we're up for a conversation with government around how we can sort of resolve it, but the insurance issue is probably not that easy to fix in the short term. The other thing that we're talking about is just getting a few of the main brokers that look after insurance for festivals in this country together and having a conversation around, is there things that we as an industry can do around giving them more info or data around, some of the things that we might be claiming for in the future, to be able to give them a greater understanding of the risk profile on their side, and then maybe that having an impact on expanding coverage or reducing premiums or something like that.
Intervention by police, climate change, and rising ticket costs have not only impacted the organisers behind some of the country's favourite festivals, but had a massive impact on the opinions of punters too. Over the last 10 years, 41 registered festivals have cited extreme weather as the reason for their cancellation. In a time when our money stretches less than ever before, changing consumer behaviour has understandably shifted people's attention away from multi-day festival experiences. COVID-19 has its part to play also, with countless cancellations, seemingly at the drop of a hat, leaving our money in limbo. It's easy to see why ticket buyers are needing more convincing nowadays. For Tara, these consumer behaviours and their ties to climate change and rising costs is something that festival organisers need to be upfront in owning and communicating.
You know, there is no ignoring the fact that putting on a music festival is really difficult. You know, high insurance costs and climate change and rising DJ fees and whatever, like all of that stuff aside, I feel like we just need to be brought back to remembering that this is a two-way conversation between people who organize events and patrons. Like, we have a obligation to give them not just value for money, like in the sense of like you paid for a ticket and, you know, the event worked and it was smooth and there was infrastructure to support your, you know, health and well-being. But we owe you an experience. Like, it should be interesting. Like, you should come out of it and be like, that was amazing. And as a result of that, I'm going to continue to believe in supporting the arts in Australia. Maybe not this particular event, maybe I'm going to go to a different one, but like my faith in this ecosystem as being amazing is fulfilled, and it's something I'm going to support. And likewise, you know, patrons have to recognize that buying a ticket to a festival isn't necessarily the same as, like, I don't know, buying sneakers from Nike. It's not some like multi-billion-dollar industry with insane margins that is like taking advantage of people to produce a physical product. It's really complex, and most people doing it have motivations beyond just the financial. Like, there's creative reasons and philosophical reasons that kind of keep people engaged. And we just have to remember this is the game we're both choosing to play. You know, you're choosing to be a patron of an arts event, and you're choosing to promote one. Like, we are voted in and out by the public. And while the court of public opinion can be really unfair sometimes, and I do think patrons these days are almost a little spicier than ever in terms of how aggressive they can be to critique events sometimes. Like, they are the customer at the end of the day. And if we're failing to excite them or to draw attention to our own shows, you know, it's kind of like the choice we made to play the game. It's not an easy game to play, but we have chosen to play it.
Many of the events with thousands of people, hundreds of staff, countless stalls, food providers, and emergency services have started to lose popularity. In fact, this year was the first time in over a decade that Burning Man was unable to sell out. Our lives online have enabled music lovers to feel closer to smaller community groups, artists, bands, DJs, and ways of thinking than ever before. According to Creative Australia's 2024 report, Soundcheck, Insights into Australia's Music Festival Sector, the most popular music genre for Australian music festivals is electronic. Almost 1 in 4 music festivals in Australia is in electronic music festivals, 23% of festivals. 41 which encompass several subgenres, including dance, electronic dance music, or EDM, electronica, house, psychedelic, techno, and trance. With dance music becoming an increasing presence in music globally, it's no wonder that some of the country's largest events are ones which feature dance-heavy lineups. For Tangela, this tells her a lot about where Australia's festival industry is likely headed.
I think the scene is smaller and it's cuter here, so it's, you know, community-led. But then that's also an interesting, like, you enter into interesting conversation about legal festivals versus renegade or illegal festivals. Because the legal festivals, they're like, they may be harder to start getting into as a like up and coming DJ, but the doofs per se, or like renegade festivals, there's so many of them and it's like so community run and there's like opportunity to play those sort of things all the time. And then I think the ball just kind of gets rolling from there. Once you play them, then the bigger festivals kind of see you and are like, we want you, we want the cool underground talent. Anyone that I speak to, maybe it isn't just in my circles, but loves a DIY event because you feel connected to that community. And what else is music about if it's not feeling like connection to the community that you feel you belong in and that subculture? And DIY events have that feeling. Bigger festivals do everything that they can to kind of capture that feeling. It's so special. For me personally, DIY events, it's about the heart that goes into it and the amount of people that come together and do it just for the love of it rather than, you know, they're just being paid to be there.
These more unregulated events provide solutions to many of the issues that plague larger regulated events, such as their focus on community, patron safety, and local artists. While many government leaders have, historically, looked down on these, Cate Faehrmann understands that these demonstrate a need for the laws and regulations surrounding the sector to improve.
If you over-regulate anything, you're going to get a black market, really, in whatever it is that you're trying to police too much or trying to stop. So we've just got to, again, reduce the regulation, look at the over-policing, but of course, you know, smaller warehouse raves, doofs in the country, and of course, these stuffs are amazing. In fact, we did have them 30 years ago. You know, I was a 90s raver. We had lots of them. They were amazing in Brisbane, and I'm glad to hear that heaps of them are still going. Yay. Let's go the illegal warehouse raves and all the other raves. And you know what? No matter what we do to control and regulate, I think that it's still going to happen because there's that element of how fun and exciting it is when you get that text message about, you know, where it is. I think government subsidising the arts is really important. Government subsidising music is incredibly important. And they have known for some time that the environment was changing, but they're so slow to act. This is a crisis, and again, in terms of where music goes now, we're at this real kind of point in the road. We've got a minister who has really staked his, you know, claim to fame in some ways so far on his love of music. I don't think there's a better time for a government to really put their money where their mouth is and look at what support looks like. And what support looks like is often not just one-off grants for festival at a particular time. That's a lot of industry, a lot of organisations kind of hate that. They spend so much money just managing that grant process. Again, what does the answer look like? I don't know in terms of the amount of funding, what the program looks like, but we definitely need.
While the introduction of the AFA in 2018 came about as a direct response to the needs of New South Wales's festival sector, overall, there's been little change when it comes to regulations surrounding the running of festivals. There are festivals bucking these trends, however, such as Strawberry Fields and Listen Out, which are selling out in record time. But these successes are by no means a good omen or a fix for every worker operating in the festival industry. It's at this point that it becomes all too tempting to point fingers. While the list of issues to tackle is large, as we approach the 2024-2025 summer festival season, it's important to take note of the events of the last 6 months, and to use them to inform where the industry goes next and who might be responsible.
Festival organisers, my biggest piece of advice or takeaway from the last festival we ran, build a really incredible support team. Not just your main team, but so many people are willing to support and bring so many different things to the table. And if you can manage that, the more hands, the better. It's about community, and I think that's an important lesson to learn, that you need to ask for help.
We need festival lovers, festival patrons to support their favourite events and do that by buying tickets. So I know everyone can't go to as many events as they might have been able to prior to the pandemic. You know, rents are up, budgets are tight. But if there's an event that you love, like whatever you can do to get a group together and commit to doing, you know, one of your favourite festivals every year and just buying those tickets when they go on sale, like it has a huge impact on just giving promoters the confidence that they're going to have the audience on site. And if it is going to take a little while to sell out entirely, because we're seeing festivals need to sort of almost sell out to break even these days, just in the current period, if they have a really strong on sale and don't sell out, it just gives them that confidence to see it through and make sure that the event goes ahead, hoping that they'll probably get to close to selling out or selling out before the festival starts.
Probably the most positive thing that has happened in the last 5 years is the festival industry is more collaborative. We were very siloed up until, I'd say, 4 or 5 years ago. And, you know, this sort of the advent of the Australian Festival Association, as hard as it is to have like a lobby body that speaks for as diverse a bunch of psychopaths as we kind of are, it has been really positive. And probably the biggest advice I would give is to just lean into each other for information and tactics, because you never realize how many other events have either had the same challenges you're seeing now and overcome them, or are going through them at the same time. And if you can get sort of some insight into how other people have overcome it in the past, that can help. Or if you can band together with people in the same issue now, that can help. Otherwise, you can consider working with the AFA and leaning into them for their voice and connections and expertise.
Thank you so much for listening to our episode, The Big Shift of Australia's Music Festivals, and to our guests, Cate Faehrmann, Tara Medina, Talia Jimenez, Eric Lamir, and Mitch Wilson. On behalf of EMC, we hope that this acts as a moment of reflection for anyone engaging in Australia's festival industry, and as a hopeful prediction of positive changes as we approach the year's impending summer. We'll be back with our next episode on the shrinking Australian media landscape very soon. My name is Jack Cahoon, I've been your host, and this episode was produced in partnership with TAFE New South Wales by Jack Pope. Thanks for listening.